everyone. Today you will receive a handout. One side of the handout we'll be doing today. The other side of the handout with scatter plots and linear regression we will do next week. For the side that we're doing today, we're looking for the section that says more practice, and there are numbers 5 through 12 on this page. I've already set up the screen so that the directions for the top half and the bottom half are already here. In blue, I've already put reminders about what to expect for slope when talking about a parallel or perpendicular line. For example, for parallel lines, it says m equals m. So if the slope of one line is 5, then any line parallel to it would also equal 5. For perpendicular, it says m equals -1 over m, and that's because we're talking about negative reciprocals. So if the slope of one line is 5, a line running perpendicular to it would be -1/5. I've also put inside a box the steps that we'll use for every problem on what we're doing today. These are also the same types of problems that you'll see on your next quiz, which will be Friday, on parallel and perpendicular lines. So something to keep in mind and practice throughout the week. Ask questions before Friday. Send me a remind message, send an email, or ask Mr. Eves so that you guys can go ahead and start clearing up some of these loose ends before I return. All right, for the side that says more practice, I'm going to take a look at a couple of examples and then give you a chance to try a couple and make sure that you're getting the correct answer. So have a pencil, your handout, and a calculator ready. That way we can go through these together. For number 5, the directions for the top half are to write parallel equations. The first step is to make sure that the equation is in slope-intercept form. So we want to make sure that it's already in that y equals mx plus b format. For number 5, it is in slope-intercept form. So step 1 is done. Number 2, you want to go ahead and identify all the things that you know about the problem from what's given. Since we're writing an equation that's in slope-intercept form, and slope-intercept form equations have 4 different variables that we're talking about, every problem that we work with will give us 3 out of 4 pieces of information. We should know the slope, either from an equation that's already there or something that we can find ourselves. We should also know an x value and a y value. So when I identify these pieces, the slope is 2. The x value that it gives us is -4, and the y value that it gives us is -1. Right, and then before we start looking for the next piece, we want to make sure that we're using the slope that this calls for. Since we want a parallel line, we want the slopes to match. So if the slope for our equation is 2, the slope for the equation we write will also be 2. All right, step 3. We want to solve for b, the part out of the equation that we don't know. So we'll take the equation and replace each of the variables that we do know with those numbers so that we can start solving. Y is -1, m is 2, x is -4, and we're solving for b. We can clean up the right side by simplifying 2 times -4. And then the last step to get that -8 to cancel out, we can add 8 to both sides. The value for b should end up being 7. Last step, put together the new equation. So for our equation, all we need to do is replace m with our m value and replace b with our b value. And that'll be our answer. So the equation of the line that goes through the ordered pair -4, -1, that's also parallel to the original equation, would be y equals 2x plus 7. I'm going to erase this example so that I have space for the next one. If you still need to copy anything from here, pause the video, go ahead and get what you need, and then continue. For number 7, so I'm going to go right down the left column there. Number 7, we have 4, 5 as our ordered pair. The equation that we're working with this time is x minus 2y equals 14. All right, step 1, put the equation in slope-intercept form. So this time we do have to clean it up a little bit first. It's not already in slope-intercept form, so our goal is to get y by itself. We'll start by subtracting x on both sides. Or if it helps, instead of just putting negative x, you could put a negative 1x. That way you can see an actual number sitting in front of it. At this point, to finish getting y by itself, I would divide everything by negative 2. And then my equation written in slope-intercept form would become positive 1/2 x minus 7. Step 2, we want to identify the 3 pieces that we know. For our equation, the slope is 1/2. If we're talking about a parallel line, we want the slopes to match. So our slope for this will be 1/2. The x value that we're using from the ordered pair is positive 4, and the y value that we're using from the ordered pair is positive 5. Third step, we want to solve for b. So we're going to plug in the 3 things that we know and start solving. Y is 5, m is 1/2, x is 4, and then treating this as an equation, we're just going to simplify the right side first. 1/2 multiplied by 4 is 2. And then to finish getting b by itself, we will subtract 2 on both sides. The value for b is 3. Last step, put together our new equation. So all we have to do here is replace the m with our slope and the b with our b value. The answer to number 7 is y equals 1/2 x plus 3. At this point, again, if you need to pause and copy down anything, go ahead and do that. I'm going to erase this problem. I would say to also take a moment and try number 6 and 8. Those will look just like what we did for 5 and 7, so it'll give you a chance to kind of practice what we've just looked at, and then resume the video so that you can check your 2 answers. Remember, the steps will stay the same for all of this, so you want to make sure that you're using the 4 steps that are on the side of the screen. All right, before we continue, if you have not tried number 6 and 8 yet, pause the video and try them. It's important to make sure that you kind of know what's going on here, and it'll give us a chance to kind of identify where you're maybe making mistakes if you end up missing the answer. Remember, if you don't get these answers correct, ask Mr. Eves to walk you through the problem, or find a neighbor who did get it correct and have them explain it for you. For number 6, the equation that we're working with is y equals negative 1/4 x plus 7. And the ordered pair that we want our new line to go through is 8, 3. The equation is already in slope-intercept form. The slope that we want is going to match negative 1/4. The x value that we have is positive 8. The y value that we have is positive 3. We're going to plug this into the equation and solve for b. This will end up being 3 equals negative 1/4 multiplied by 8 plus b. Negative 1/4 multiplied by 8 ends up equaling -2. And when we isolate b, we end up getting a value of 5. The answer for number 6 should be y equals -1/4 x plus 5. For number 8, we're given the ordered pair -6, 7, and the equation 5x plus 2y equals 10. For step 1, we want the equation in slope-intercept form, so we do need to take a second to do some extra work here so that we can isolate the y. I'm going to subtract 5x on both sides. We're going to divide everything by 2 to finish isolating the y. And our equation is y equals -5/2 x plus 5. For a parallel line, the slope will match, so the m that we're working with is -5/2. The x that was given in the ordered pair is -6, and the y value that we're given in the ordered pair is +7. I'm going to plug these into the equation. We get 7 equals -5/2 multiplied by -6 plus b. This ends up simplifying to 7 equals 15 plus b. And the value for b ends up equaling -8. When we put the equation together, we get y equals -5/2 x minus 8. The bottom half of the paper has essentially the exact same directions, except we're looking for perpendicular lines this time. So just a side note for the slope, because this part is really the only thing that's going to look different from the ones before, is that the slopes will not match. We do want negative reciprocals. So again, over here on the right side of your screen, in blue, it says m equals -1/m. Numerically, as an example, if you have a slope of 5, and you want a perpendicular line, we would rewrite 5 as 1/5 and make it negative instead, right? So we're doing opposite reciprocals. For number 9, the ordered pair that we are working with is 3, 3. No, excuse me, 3, -3. The equation that we're working with is y equals 3/4 x plus 5. The slope is 3/4 right now, but remember, we want a perpendicular line, so we're going to convert this to -4/3. The x value is 3, the y value is -3, and we are already on step 3 for solving. So we will plug in the things that we know. -3 equals -4/3 multiplied by 3 plus b. -4/3 multiplied by 3 would be -4. And then when we move that -4 to the other side, we would do that with addition. -3 plus 4 is 1. And we're going to put together our answer. Y equals -4/3 x plus 1. And again, with this, just be on the lookout. You want to make sure that the slope is doing what the slope is supposed to. Our equation that we're using for our answer is using the slope that was the negative reciprocal. You want to make sure you put the right slope in there. All right, pause the video if you still need to record anything for number 9. I'm going to erase this and try number 11. Okay, number 11. The ordered pair given is 2/3. The equation is 2x plus 10y equals 20. Step 1, put the equation in slope-intercept form. So before we begin jotting down anything here, we really need to rewrite this so that y is by itself. I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides. And then to finish isolating the y, we're going to divide everything by 10. Y equals negative 1/5 x plus 2. Okay. For this, we can go ahead and start jotting down things that we know. The slope for our equation right now is negative 1/5. If we're looking for a perpendicular line, that means we're going to rewrite this as positive 5/1 instead. And 5/1 is really just the same as 5. The x value for this one is 2. The y value is 3. We're going to plug in the 3 pieces that we know into our equation. This would be 3 equals 5 multiplied by 2 plus b. That gives us 10 plus b on the right side. And then when we isolate b, we end up getting a value of negative 7. When we put this back together, this would become y equals 5x minus 7. Alright, just like before, pause this if you still need to copy anything for number 11, and then go ahead and work out numbers 10 and 12. Try them. That way when you see the answers coming up, you can get some help with the ones that you miss, or ask questions if there were any pieces of it that threw you off. Alright, for number 10, we are given ordered pair negative 3, negative 2, and the equation y equals x minus 2. For this one, it has a slope of 1. For a perpendicular line, the negative reciprocal of 1 would be negative 1. So we're going to be using negative 1 for our slope. The x value is negative 3. The y value is negative 2. I'm going to go ahead and plug in all these pieces. And if you haven't tried this yet, pause the video, plug in everything, and go ahead and solve. Negative 2 equals negative 1 multiplied by negative 3 plus b. This will simplify on the right to be 3 plus b. And the value for b ends up being negative 5. When we put this together, our answer for number 10 should be y equals negative 1x minus 5. For number 12, we are given the ordered pair negative 1, negative 6, and the equation x plus 3y equals 6. For this one, step 1 needs to happen first, because this equation is not in y-intercept form, or slope-intercept form. I'm going to subtract x on both sides. Remember, if it helps, you can always add in a 1 so that you can see the number that's sitting there. We're going to divide everything by 3. The equation is negative 1/3 x plus 2. The slope for the equation right now is negative 1/3. The negative reciprocal of this for a perpendicular line would be positive 3. The x value is negative 1. The y value is negative 6. I'm going to plug that into the equation. Start simplifying and isolate b. The answer for number 12 is y equals 3x minus 3. Alright, so at this point, you should have work for numbers 5 through 12, all correct answers, because if you miss something, you can erase it and fix it. This is essentially what the second half of today's assignment is. It says Unit 4 Linear Equations Homework 10 at the top, but this is just practice for in class. There are 12 questions. If you do not finish these 12 questions, you should try wrapping them up at home for homework. There is no quizzes homework this week. Just keep in mind you do have a quiz on parallel perpendicular lines, identifying them and writing equations like what you're doing today on Friday. The best way to minimize the number of retakes is to make sure that you're prepared for this quiz. So if you missed any of the questions, please ask for help before you start the practice. And then when you start the practice, remember these 4 steps that I had over here on the side. It's the same 4 steps for everything. So you want to make sure all the equations you're working with are in slope-intercept form. And then identify the 3 pieces of information that we know from every example. Solve for B. And then put together your new equation. Okay, it's going to be the same 4 steps every time.